that leads us into, I'm pleased to say, the session where indeed Stephen will have to stay here and answer even more questions, but he will bring back his fellow panelists, and we'll bring them back now, and any question goes. We've got many questions lining up. Thank you everyone for hitting the Q&A button. This is the way that we all advance together, pardon the pun, when we hear the questions. So who have we got coming back? We've got the team, and I'll, Steve, hand to you to conduct the questions and go to the people that you need the answers from. Back to you.
Fantastic. So I'll ask Nick, Julia, and Sophia just to ready themselves, because I will be hitting each of you up with some questions. Just as we start, don't hesitate to use that Q&A button. We've got a bunch of questions already, but if you've got any more questions, we'd love to get into detail and make sure that we're guided by you. Now, there was one question here in terms of the ISVs. We did mention it briefly, but a question here from Alex: what are the options for integrating freight software with Advanced? So if we're integrating freight software in terms of inventory dispatch, we did mention Open Freight is an ISV or a connected service that is integrated into MYOB Advanced. That said, if you also have some pain points around the warehousing process, if you want to get some efficiencies around wave picking, looking at, touch the box once, have it consignment label printed. There's the Avexo warehouse management system also has integration into Open Freight. So that would not only save you time in terms of your warehouse efficiency, but enables you to consign on the go and have those consignment labels printed and put them on the boxes as they head out the door. I hope that answers your question, Alex. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any further questions on that one. Now, I might bring Nick in first. Nick.
Hello.
Are you ready to go?
Yeah, sure.
Now, there was one question on the chat from Kerry. A question from Kerry in that she's not actually seeing the allocations on her finance menu. And we talked about this briefly the other day.
Yeah, so there's a couple of reasons potentially why. One of the reasons is to do with the addition of Advanced you're actually running. So I believe that the allocations is in the enterprise editions and upwards. So it might be that factor. If you're using something like Standard or Plus, then that's why you're not seeing that. The other option is it might be as simple as enable disable features behind the scenes, just to kind of like add that in via that section. Yep. That might be the reason.
So just to add to that, two of the features that Nick demonstrated in his session was the use of additional ledgers, so statistical ledgers, and the use of allocations. Both of those are only available in the Enterprise Edition. Of course, the Plus Edition adds fixed assets as well as a bit of a lift up from the Standard Edition. If you really wanted to push the use of MYOB Advanced within your finance team, and there's some really valuable features there, you can change editions. So if there's something that you need to do, if you want to upgrade from the Plus Edition, for example, to the Enterprise Edition, you can. Just reach out to your partner. I'm sure they can assist with guiding you through that process. All right, another question for you, Nick. I'll leave that one to the end. Sorry, can our team on the road see how much stock they have using the MYOB Advanced app?
They potentially can, yes. So I've done this in the past for a client, and we used a generic inquiry to actually do that side of things, and we just simply had it set up to pick parameter of whichever location or van or whatever they're in, and they can do that via the mobile app, and you can publish these generic inquiries to the mobile app. So you can actually go into the generic inquiry and see the little box that says exposed to mobile, and you can do it via that. Going forwards though, Stephen mentioned about some of the new changes Acumatica have made to the app. Going forwards, they're going to start to allow inclusion of screens and make it a little bit simpler from that point of view, but generic inquiries can handle that easily.
Perfect. Thanks, Nick. Keep your questions coming, people. Now I have a couple of questions here for Julia, possibly leading into Sophia as well, but I'll bring you on first, Julia. There's a bit of a question here in terms of the onboarding process. When will the onboarding declarations for new hires get pushed through to the ATO? And we kind of talked about this in our little session on STP phase 2. Does it happen straight away, or do we need to manually push this through? Do you want to talk to that, Julia?
So with STP phase 2, it actually feeds through automatically to the ATO. But what happens is it only feeds through when you actually run a pay run. You don't want it going through before then, because the employee may decide that they don't want to work for you anymore before you've even paid them a cent. So it comes directly workforce management, payroll, ATO with the first pay run. Easy as.
Fantastic. Now, another question here from Kuldeep. Can you please advise if we can calculate the overtime hours for employees which are grouped and either work 38 hours, 32 hours, 20 hours, or 16 hours per week, so that their actual overtime hours are different? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I think that's definitely a workforce management question there. I'm sure that Sophia has something to say about that, where the payrolls and awards are concerned.
Yeah. So thanks for your question. So this is actually quite feasible in the system. What we can do is we've got the different conditions and different engines set up under the award interpretation. We could basically specify the period over time by saying your duration per period, like weekly, fortnightly, and how do you want to set the cap for the period. For example, you can specify like 38 hours per week. And above that, that's the overtime. You could also specify like 18 hours as a cap. Above that are the overtime. Yeah, it's quite flexible in terms of the award interpretation in that.
That's great. Yeah, look, just to add to that, I think for any organisation that currently struggles with those issues around award interpretation, the last thing you want is for your poor payroll person to be digging through awards at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday evening. Workforce management really does remove the pain in that and just make sure that you're addressing those compliance issues that we certainly know are certainly very prominent concerns at the moment, given some of the things that have happened in terms of recent news stories. Thank you, Sophia. That's fantastic. Now, I do have another question here. And I might address this one. So there's a question here. I can see that our company is definitely not using MYOB Advanced to its full potential. What training is available to learn generic inquiries, allocations, report writing, etc.? Now, there's probably a mix of things, Anonymous. What we have is firstly some advanced generic inquiry writer training that is available. So if you have needs around generic inquiries, utilizing OData, using dashboards, those sorts of things, you'll actually find that that generic inquiry, that advanced generic inquiry writer training is a great option. A lot of this will depend upon your partner and the services that they provide, of course. Around elements such as allocations, I think there's a real opportunity once you've been utilizing for MYOB Advanced for a while to come back and relook at some of those pain points and some of those opportunities that you've got in your business to actually use Advanced more effectively and to leverage the tool that you've got. We actually recommend clients undertake sort of regular business process reviews in conjunction with a consultancy. Have a consultant come in, sit alongside you, understand where your organization's going, understand the pain points that you have, and look to what improvements that we can make and what are the biggest, what's the biggest value improvements we can make for your investment. Allocations is certainly one area within the finance team where you can save a lot of time, a lot of effort, and just get more accuracy around that you're managing your GL transactions. But I encourage you to look at getting some support for your partner, bring them in, get them to provide some training, but look at those processes that aren't delivering the results that they could. And I think that's it in terms of questions. So back to you, Grant.
Now, I know Val's had to drop off, but we do have a question here. I'm going to put you on the spot, Simone.
Sure, go for it.
We do have a question from a client. It's having some concerns with a number of technical support issues that have been escalated by their partner to MYOB, currently waiting on the MYOB team. They've been waiting on these for some time. And the question is what's being done to see some of these escalations and some of the solution requirements become more timely. Now, I know that the team's been impacted around, the upgrades at the back end of last year, the changes to the new cohorts. There's been a lot of platform stuff, a lot of development going on. But do you have any feedback that you can provide to the group around that question, Simone? Sorry to put you on the spot.
So absolutely, with the support, we're very much aware there are some issues that have been outstanding for some time. And so what we're trying to do at the moment, I'm actually working with the team leader. We have a brand spanking new team leader and a new leadership team working with the support team. So what we're currently doing at the moment is we're taking a holistic view to those support cases that have been outstanding for some time, and we're currently working through those support tickets. As any other company has been as well, we have been affected over the last couple of months by COVID. So we're just starting to come back from that as well now. So we have had a few people off here and there, which has affected our ability to service our business partners and thus our clients as well, our customers as well. So apologies for that. I will get hold of that question and have a look at it personally, but we are now definitely working through the outstanding tickets and putting extra resource into that to see how we can manage to get those resolved.
Understand. That's great, Simone. Thank you for that. Now, look, that question was lodged anonymously. I will just ask whoever asked that question just to reach out to me. If you don't have my details, just feel to get them from the marketing team of the user groups, and I can pass that along to you, Simone, as well. We just certainly appreciate your support in that.
Apologies for the interruption as well.
Moving on with the rest of the questions. Now, we have a question here and I'm going to pass this over to payroll. Julia, are you ready to go?
Absolutely.
All right. Is it possible to have a manager? Actually, this might be a question for Sophia, so I'll let one of you answer this. Is it possible to have a manager sign off on a contract or employment offer prior to this being sent to the new employee? For example, the HR officer prepares the documents and then wants the manager to review prior to the transmission to employee.
I actually saw this question in the Q&A session, and I think it's quite a good question. Can I share my screen?
Sure, Sophia.
Yeah, I had a bit of play in the system, and actually there is a function in the system called documents. In here, the HR officer could upload the documents such as the employee letter of offer, could click this document and to send to the manager. For example, our Mr. Sample might be a manager, we could click the name for this manager and request the signed acknowledgement from this manager. Once this manager has received this document and the manager can sign for acknowledgement, then he can return this document to the HR officer, and the HR officer could get this confirmation of the document and to upload into the employee's onboarding session, so employee can get a document with the confirmation of the manager.
Fantastic. That's great, Sophia. And of course, they can be used for all sorts of documents. They could be company policies. They could be changing policies that you need to send out to a broader range of employees, for example, a group of employees or team leaders, for example. So that I know that feature can be used for a whole range of elements. So that's great. Now, one more question here, one from Caleb. Good to see you, Caleb. Can leave be automatically applied across a pay period?
Yes, absolutely. That is a great functionality of MYOB. I absolutely love that functionality. Employees can apply for leave, and because when employees apply for leave, you set it ready for the pay period. Depending on when the pay period falls on the leave, some of the leave could be paid in this pay period, some of the leave paid in the next pay period. So you can absolutely apply leave over different pay periods. In the same breath, sorry, I know we're running out of time, but I just have to say this. If leave happens in a previous pay period because someone is off sick or they've forgotten to put leave in, you can still apply that to be paid, and then you can set it to be paid in a future pay period. So it works very, very well.
Perfectly, that's great. Now I will just make the last call for questions. If you do have any final questions that you want to lodge, just use that Q&A button and hit us up. Now I do have a couple here for Nick. If you're ready to go, I think it's a little bit of a continuation of a Stump the Consultant, or a Stump the Nick, as I like to call it. Are you there, Nick?
I am indeed, yes.
Fantastic. All right, so let's grab a couple of these. How can I track large customer spends and budgets within Advance?
That is an interesting question. I would say, I mean, within Advanced itself, you could potentially use the sub-account segments to track large customers from that perspective. And the reason I say that is because using these sub-accounts, you can then build budgets and, then look at the actuals based on the GL account flowing through. So you could do it on that basis. The other option potentially would be using something like Focus as well. Stephen, I think you probably would say similar kind of thing, because you can actually do that extra kind of layer from a customer and from a salesperson perspective. It's built within Focus. So that's a good kind of way of checking budgets and not using those extra sub-accounts if needed.
Yep. Good question. All right, another one here. Can we be alerted if we're getting close to going over budget for a project or for a job?
Yeah, so harking back to the business events and that real utilization of generic inquiries to drive notifications, I would definitely say that if you've got a generic inquiry that's built to show, where you're getting to, you can actually then use a business event to actually go, right, we're getting within 20% or 40% or whatever it's going to be, and then trigger a business event based on that generic inquiry as well to whoever it needs to go to.
Fantastic. Now, in our last user group, the 2021 round 2 user groups, Nick did do a great presentation around business events and triggering them off GIs. Went into a fair bit of detail. So if you didn't see that, check it out on the YouTube as well. It'll be worthwhile watching and referring back to that. Nick, for you, could we track a stat and then have a service contract alter based upon that stat? Now, I think we were talking about statistical ledgers.
Yes,
I'd say that's where that's come from.
Yeah, so I would say you definitely can. I think the only thing just to kind of put into that would be if you're tracking something like a statistic, then you need to tag it to a customer or something like that. So statistical ledger is good for tracking internal like statistics and things like that. So really what you can do is you can basically track, statistics using that, and then you could drive a business event with an import scenario. But what I've also found in the past as well is that if you're tracking, say, for example, kilograms sold of coffee, we've got an example with that side of things, and we're servicing machines, then you can actually build reports again as a generic inquiry and then trigger an import scenario to update the service contracts and look at it and go, this needs to now be serviced every 6 months versus every year. So you can definitely do something from that side of things.
Very, very cool. All right. Thank you, Nick. That's fantastic. And I do have one last question for Julia or Sophia. When are awards going to be inbuilt in workforce management?
So I'll just pick that one up. I think that normally what we do is we do a design meeting and we discuss that with the client. At the moment, there are no awards already inbuilt with workforce management. It's all about company specifications and what you want, and we discuss that with you. To be honest with you, I'm not sure if that is on the roadmap and when they'll be available, but I think that if whomever that is reaches out, Stephen, we can find out from MYOB, ask that question.
Just to add to that, I think in terms of our implementation experience, we find that a lot of organisations do have varying requirements. You do have EBAs, you do have lots of extra allowances and things that you're doing. So one of the strengths of MYOB Advanced Workforce Management is the fact that we can take those client-specific requirements, build out all of those requirements in the Workforce Management Award Interpretation Engine, and have that used to do your interpretation over the top of time. So certainly don't consider, consider the fact that that's a strength as well in terms of the approach that we take with that. And I think that's it in terms of questions. So I'm going to hand back to you, Grant.